we've been doing a lot more Zoom over the phone business just because we have to be safe, right? And we're not I'm an MBA, not a PhD, not going to give you an opinion on what's going on in that area of the world. What I'm really here to talk about today, reintroduce you to Voya, right? You've probably seen the silly orange money ads, right? We have a nice brand. We're here to guide you to and through retirement. I was recruited here, for lack of a better term, to fill a void, to help you with those services, right? It's not just about looking at your investment account, your 457, your SEP IRA. The service that I really specialize in is financial planning, right? Guiding you towards a goal, whether that's funding college, funding retirement, or something in between, right? So we all have all these goals that we're working on in our lifetimes. And the way I like to think about it, I don't really call it retirement. I call it financial independence, right? Because we're just moving on to a different stage in the life cycle. And if you want to think about it, we're always looking for our independence. It's just from different things at different stages of our life. So I want to just introduce myself, a business partner with Karen Noyes here, who's also on the call. I'm going to be the individual that will be handling the one-on-ones, the on-site, hopefully when we have that opportunity. And I just think that this is such a great opportunity that we can virtually meet, for example, right? I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to get back on site, but I wanted to do a 2020 year review because you nice folks didn't have the opportunity to sit with us. We've had some calls, really appreciate the folks that reached out, but a lot has gone on, right? In this crazy 12 months thinking backwards, right? I mean, if we think about March 2020, that's when we had a rather significant pullback in the markets. When I refer to the markets, I'm really referring to the S&P 500. The 500 largest companies in America, I feel is the best representation for our guideposts, our benchmark, how we're doing versus a large list of companies. In addition to the S&P 500, there's also other indices that you've certainly heard of on TV, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ. Dow Jones Industrial, 30 largest stocks, NASDAQ 100 largest tech stocks. So, darkest days, March of 2020, when we were all shifting our offices to working from home, we were tuning in on the news, watching what was going on down in New York City, and then we were a little uncertain about what things were really going to look like moving forward. And when there's uncertainty in the markets, it's human nature to sell. So what happened? Well, we went back about 30% from a high, and there was a lot of uncertainty. We were fielding a good amount of calls coming into our office. But the conversations that I had was, well, did your goals change? And usually individuals' goals didn't change. It's just they're a little concerned about the volatility. So it's about taking the right amount of risk. And that's what I'm here to help you do, because this is what I do every day. I'm the type of person that just can't help myself. When I wake up in the morning, I have to see what's going on in the markets. That's not what rational people like yourselves do. You have your own families, your own jobs to do. So I'm really offering to help take a brick off your wagon, take something off your plate to help you with the portfolios, to review that, and also with the financial planning. I think it's a good kind of review since we haven't had an opportunity like this recently. I know we've had some new folks enroll in the plan, really appreciate the business, just to talk about why we invest, why we contribute to a 457 plan, for example. And I really think that there's two reasons primarily why you do it. The first being tax deferral, right? I mean, not making this about partisan at all, right? I think if we have the ability to save a little bit on our taxes, because every dollar that goes into a 457 plan lowers our taxable income, a beautiful thing. The other thing that allows, right, we're in a tax deferred investment arrangement where we're making money kind of from day one, if you want to think about it like this, opposed to if you were saving at your local bank, right? If you're saving at your local bank, well, you're paying taxes on those funds to get them into the local bank. the 457 contribution comes out pre-tax, which gets you so far ahead. And then I work with you to help with a diversified investment that's suitable based on the amount of risk that you're comfortable in taking and how we're going to achieve your long-term goals. Another thing that's certainly a big part of my business is interest rates, right? We've seen some movement in interest rates. Like, for example, in 2020, we had historic low rates, and I was advising a lot of my clients to take advantage of refinancing opportunities, for example. Still quite relevant and with the rates coming up a little bit now, but there were some great opportunities to be had there. Interest rates are a double-edged sword, though, and I'm also working with a lot of folks that are looking to purchase that first home, for example. And with rates low, these home prices have gone up rather dramatically. And supply demand, right, lack of inventory, greater Portland area, people working remotely, used to commute to Boston, no longer. So the real estate market has kind of been hotter than ever. And I think a lot of that has to do with rates. Now, rates have come up a little bit. And what I really view as the predominant rate to follow is the 10-year Treasury. The 10-year Treasury was about 50, 60 basis points, about 0.5% down in the darkest days. It's come back to about 1.5%. So we've seen a rather dramatic shift in that. And we'll see that in other aspects of our life as it flows through the system. Mortgage rates are starting to go up. We'll see if savings rates go up. Those are always the slowest, frankly, to follow. So it's about making that investment, making a contribution, kind of setting it up when we have a conversation with the right amount of risk. And that's going to be different for pretty much everyone on this call because you're all at different points in the life cycle. I'm going to say, right, when we're younger, we certainly have more time to grow the funds. Generally speaking, it makes sense to take more risk. When you're closer to that retirement date, it makes sense to take a little risk off the table. But the other thing I'll say, in this low interest rate environment, there's situations where maybe I'd be looking at a situation where historically a balanced portfolio is 60% bonds, 40% stocks, where maybe we're looking more like 70% stocks, 30% bonds, just because of the interest rates, right? The expectation on the fixed is just not where it was before they started cutting rates, and definitely not where it was pre-financial crisis. So I think another interesting thing to look at 2020 is looking at kind of the winners and losers. And some, I mean, you're going to think that, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we're living, working differently. The biggest winner in 2020 in the NASDAQ, right, the tech sector, was up about 40%. And you might think, with everything going on, how did technology go up 40%? Well, think about what that really pertains to. That's Facebook, that's Apple, that's Amazon, right? Google, all these tech giants that now we have more time to potentially use their services, right? If we're working from home, more engagement, so that they've had a great run. Right behind them, a close second was healthcare. And that's just not a race to the vaccine play. It's really about demographics. And we'll think about the baby boomers, right? And they have the majority of the wealth in this country. Folks are living longer than ever. So if folks aren't traveling and recreating, well, then where are those dollars going? Well, they're going to durable medical equipment, pharmaceuticals. So we want to participate in those trends as well. Not everything made money last year. There were certainly some distinct winners and losers in the consumer sector, the discretionary spending, the cyclical spending. Think about the airlines, right? We'll back up March 2020, about February 2020, pre-Super Bowl, before this really got out in the news, before people changed their travel habits. There were about 2.5 million people going through TSA gates every week. I think we're about at a million now. So the demand is not even close. There's a lot of layoffs, furloughs in that industry. A lot of government aid keeping those companies going. On the other hand, let's look at the automotive sector, right? Uh, Used car prices, pretty much higher than ever. Limited inventory on newer vehicles, scarcity. Some of it has to do with the lack of semiconductors, lack of chips, lack of components to build these new vehicles with. So the automotive sector did well, the airline sector did not. So there's always going to be these winners and losers in the consumer space. But the two sectors that lag predominantly, the first one really has to do with supply and demand, and that's the energy sector, right? If people aren't flying, driving, we saw a rather dramatic drop in the price of energy, and it certainly affected those companies. But the other thing that we've seen a rather dramatic pullback in is real estate. And I'm not talking about residential real estate. I'm talking about commercial real estate and really picking on the concrete jungles, right? Up and down the East Coast here, Boston, New York, DC. Think about the amount of folks that used to commute from the suburbs into these offices. They haven't came back. I think when they do come back, it's going to be more of a hybrid work environment. More senior individuals might have the flexibility of working from home. I think there is some value of having individuals like, for example, if you're working on a marketing team or more of a service center environment where there's value with being able to stand up and walk down and talk to a colleague. I do believe that those types of offices will come back, but there's going to be a lot of in between. Think about restaurant capacity, for example, in all these metropolitan areas and what they're paying for leases right now. So there's going to have to be a realigning of that space. So the two lagging spaces, I would say, in 2020 were real estate and energy. Now let's kind of fast forward here to 2021 because we know everything in life is cyclical, right? And really and truly, we've seen that in the energy sector. It's about supply and demand. That's the one thing I want to really stress here. And we've had a changing administration. So think about some of the policies that this new administration is putting into place. Number one, right? Fracking on federal lands. There's not going to be the potential for new leases on federal lands. We're kind of the swing producer for fossil fuels kind of in the globe right now. OPEC does their own thing. We don't really adhere to those rules. So that's why we kind of have a lot of price control right now. But with demand coming back and still not more supply in the marketplace, that's why you've seen the increase in energy at prices, for example, at the pump. And we'll see how it levelizes over time. But we've seen a little run in energy, which has certainly benefited those companies. Still a small piece of most people's overall portfolios. The other sector that's done quite well this year, now coming back to interest rates, is financials. As rates come up, the spreads on loans are more profitable, and these institutions print even more money. Financials are really profitable under any circumstance with the regulatory environment that they're under. They have to have more capital now than pre-financial crisis. So they were making money in that very low rate period, and we expect them to make more money as rates normalize over time. So that might be a little bit of an opportunity, right, to get a little bit more exposure to financials. Well, what's not making money so far this year? Well, one of the other well-performing sectors last year, when things were going bad, there's always a rush into the steady Eddie stocks. And think about things like you're buying at the grocery store, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, right? These things that we buy good times or bad times. there's a little bit more optimism in the economy right now that things are going to be reopening. So, for example, travel and leisure stocks have done better this year than the more boring consumer staple stocks. Similar utilities have had a little pullback, kind of just same idea. So tech and healthcare about flat this year, year to date. We're still waiting on the stimulus bill as well. I think that's kind of, once we get past that period, we'll see how these policies are going to get put into place and how really things are going to manifest into our economy. But as far as looking forward, we're certainly optimistic about the markets moving forward over the next 3-5 years. I certainly believe that they will be higher at that point in time. But the other thing that's worth mentioning, there's always two forces in the market. And I think we've seen this, and I'll bring up GameStop, right? Because that's been in the news, and I think it's worth touching on because might get a couple smiles out there because it is something that I find personally interesting. So, right, we have the concept of the retail trader, and I'm going to call the retail trader the day trader. There's kind of two forces in the market at all times. There's folks like us who are making investments over the long term to supplement our wealth down the road. That's really the predominance of what America is doing in the stock market. But then there's the traders that are coming in and out and trying to make a bet one direction, really based on news, and interpreting that news very quickly and making a bet in accordance to it. Well, we all know that there's no such thing as a free lunch. So these individuals, and I'll pick on Robinhood, right, that believe that they were getting something for free. Well, there's nothing for free. You're not getting the same price as someone who's paying for a trade. That could be a great opportunity if you're a long-term investor, right, to not pay a commission on a trade. But when you're a trader, if that's truly what your mantra is, and I'm going to say about 90% of day traders lose money. There's very few people that can do this successfully over the long term. But there are some people that certainly hang their hat on those types of strategies. So Robinhood is selling your data, essentially, right? They're selling it to a hedge fund. The hedge fund is able to make bets one way or the other quicker than you can execute your trades. So that's why it's free. Is it really free? Well, they're using your data. The best argument I think I've heard on something like this is it's similar to Facebook. It's similar to Google. If you're not paying for something, then you are essentially the product itself. So I think Robinhood has been a disruptor, similar to how Tesla was a disruptor, right? Tesla changed the mantra on electric vehicles. They made it so all these other companies had to go that direction or they risked losing future sales down the road. I think Robinhood's done a similar thing with having other institutions give more access to the consumer. But what Robinhood did was absolutely wrong by artificially freezing those trades. And we're going to have to see how the regulators are really going to apply that down the road. The other individual that made a lot of headlines through this was Gil, Roaring Kitty, there on his GameStop trade where he turned a $53,000 investment into, I think, about $53 million. What's not as reported is Gil is someone like me. Gil works for Morgan Stanley. He's not a financial advisor where he has clients. He's more of in the marketing department. But what Gil's job is to create marketing directives for advisors. So he's very skilled on social media. He's very skilled publishing stuff on the web, stuff that I don't really have those skills because I'm more of a client-facing individual. My business has always been working with individuals one-on-one, helping them achieve their financial independence. So I believe that Gil has lost his FINRA license because what I would call what he was doing is a pump and dump. I don't believe that GameStop has underlying financial value to support the stock price. By no means. GameStop does not earn money. Retail business like a GameStop is going to be challenged when individuals, for example, can buy games directly on the internet. Could they reinvent themselves? Well, certainly. Any company can reinvent themselves, but cash flow negative right now. What was Gil doing? Gil was making all of these marketing materials, very eye-catching materials, and posting them on Reddit and other forums. I call this a pump and dump because there's going to be individuals like Gil who got in at $3, $5, $7, $15. But then there's going to be individuals that got in at $100, $200, $300. And it's not really right to propagate, to really pump up an individual stock, because someone is going to end up making a poor decision, putting in too much wealth into an individual position. I mean, generally speaking, you should not have more than 5 to 10% of your individual wealth in an individual stock. And you're hearing a lot of horror stories about people getting in at the wrong time. So what's the point of this story is to be successful, the best strategy is a long-term, fundamentally diversified approach. Can you make money on an individual stock? You certainly can, but our strategies here at Voya are having you invest, if not hundreds and thousands of individual companies, to spread out that risk, to diversify that risk. You could certainly have a play account. I think there's nothing wrong with doing something like that, but putting a material amount of wealth as that individual did, and he was able to make a tremendous amount of wealth from it, is not something that I'd ever advise folks to do. I don't recommend that people put the majority of their wealth in individual securities just based on diversification factors. So I think that's something that is worth talking about just because it's in the news right now. But really what I wanted to offer everyone today, right, what was that financial planning service. Doesn't matter where you are on the life cycle. It could be planning for retirement. That's certainly the most popular item. But maybe it's planning for buying that first home or planning for your children's education. There's just so many things in life that we can plan on, that it doesn't just have to be an all or nothing retirement conversation. I really like to strive to be a guide to help you with anything that's financial, if you want a second opinion on. Being a financial advisor, of course, I can't give you a tax or legal advice, but sometimes I can help you formulate the questions a lot more concisely. So when you're on the clock with those individuals, because I know some CPAs, some attorneys, right? You have a nice friendly conversation with them, like you might with me, and then a bill shows up in the mail. You're never going to have to worry about that with me. I don't charge hourly rates. I look at the financial planning service as part of my existing business. If I'm not offering that service to you, then I feel like I'm risking losing your business down the road by not offering it. So I think that's really where my industry is going, towards the comprehensive financial planning model. So it's not just about, right, the account. Love to talk about the 457 plan, right? Help you with your diversification there. We could also help you with the SEP IRAs as well. I know you have the choice of doing that with Voya or someone else. I can always help you with that. And then, right, I do a lot of Roth IRAs in my practice as well. We do 529 plans. So really just taking advantage of what's best under your circumstance. Looking at pre-tax investment options are certainly something that I'm going to bring to your attention if you're not already doing. I think a Roth IRA is a great vehicle. For example, let's just say you have savings at your local bank, and we're not earning much at the local bank right now, right? 0.5%, maybe on a good day. If we can earmark some of those funds for the long term, That's where I really see a lot of value in a Roth. Right? We set up a diversified portfolio and we just shift that from one bucket to another bucket, another after-tax bucket. So there's a lot of different ways to invest. I don't want to get really into individual funds on the call here today. I think that's a lot more relevant when we have our individual conversations. But the best thing that we can do for you, and we can do this virtually, we can do this over the phone, and I'm expecting, right, warmer weather scientific options. Hopefully, have an opportunity for some in-person meetings this summer to really guide you moving forward. As I know you haven't had the on-site meetings like you had previously, that's something that I would really like to offer. Once we can do it, I see like a lot of people are still working remotely, as am I. So I think as the world opens up, we might have that opportunity. I don't have dates certainly right now for that, but I do have a digital calendar. Lisa was kind enough to share that. So if you ever want to reserve a time for me to call you, yeah, I'll be provided with the best number to contact you on. Any notes that you want to enter in that little field as well is quite helpful for me. And then you kind of reserve the time. You're always welcome to call our offices as well. But we do have that digital calendar feature, which I think is a nice touch point in this new normal, right? Do as much stuff digitally as possible. We've used this experience, right? More virtual work. We're doing a lot more stuff on DocuSign, for example. We can establish the SEP IRAs, for example, on DocuSign. We could also update a lot of your information, for example, if we ever wanted to modify beneficiaries. The way I'd advise that we do that is we just have a nice little friendly conference call. I won't have any fancy hold music for you, but I can get us right into the service center, save you a lot of hold time, and just get that done for you right on the phone. So there's a lot of ways to do things. There's some great self-help tools on your Voya retirement plan login. I encourage you to use some of those My Orange Money as kind of a self-help, and then use me for kind of more of the comprehensive big picture. So I know I said a lot there. About a half hour in here. Not sure, Lisa, if we might want to pause for a second here and see if that might have developed any questions so far.
Anybody have any questions? Do you want to? Does anybody have anything, Zeke, that you want Zeke to address while we're in the meeting?
Lisa, I have a question. Sorry, yes. I was trying to unmute and on video. I'm wondering, I know that we can get our 457 information in Voya Orange Money, but in terms of our SEP IRA account balance through FAME, where do we see that information? Is that separate? Is that included? Do we have access to that account balance?
Yes, I believe that I can help you manually input that. I don't believe that's going to be imported automatically like your 457 plan. And please add anything that I might be missing on this, Karen. But that's something that we can either input manually or we can do kind of on the comprehensive together. But I don't believe that comes through automatically as the 457 plan does. And Karen, please add anything if I'm wrong.
Is that something that, oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
No, there is a field when you're in My Orange Money for other retirement plan assets. So you can input it there. If you're, because some people accept their SEP IRAs not with Voya. So they would have to bring that information in. So there is a field on the My Orange Money tool where you input the balance. I think it's other employer plans. So
Lisa or anybody anybody on the call from Fame, where would we get that? Would that be something we would go through Shelley or?
Well, is your SEP IRA with Voya?
That would be my question, Mary. Wherever your SEP IRA is from, that would be your responsibility to know where it's from and your account information.
SEP IRA we set up ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
And I believe mine is with Voya. I thought it was. I guess I need to go back.
I just sent you a chat, Mary, and
Okay.
told you where your chat, where you have.
Where you
set up.
do the distribution. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
because all Fame does is you provide us with a mailing address and account number, and we cut a check every month.
Okay. So if I
Everything
go
else
get
is
that
directly-
balance, okay, gotcha. So if I go get that balance, then I can import that into Orange Money. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
And I'll look and see if you're with Voya, Mary.
I'm not. Shelley just confirmed.
Oh.
She chatted with me and told me where I need to look for that. So,
Okay.
Well,
Thank
that
you.
company, Mary, might still be Voya because that's how Voya used to be
Oh.
addressed.
right.
So I don't want to say where you
Oh.
are in front of
Yeah.
everybody, but you can
Yeah.
probably work with Zeke privately.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. But
Yeah,
it
the one-
wouldn't, it wouldn't on its own, Shelley, it sounds like, even if it is Voya underlying, the previous name, it's probably not just going to automatically show there. It's still, no matter what, going to be a manual upload. It sounds like, Zeke.
You're correct. It's going to be a manual upload regardless, and I can certainly help anyone on the call with moving a SEP IRA to Voya. So that's certainly a part of the service as well.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
Anybody else have any questions? Any topics they'd like to hear Zeke address?
Just one thing I'd like to remind everybody about, and that is the importance of making sure you work with Zeke to get your beneficiary information updated in Voya system. We've got a bunch of folks that have filled out paper a long time ago. They need to get updated into the Voya system, so you should go in there and do it, and Zeke can help you. As well as making, and there are a lot of folks that have not put any beneficiaries in, and that's a really bad thing. We've had discussion before about what happens if something does happen to you and you don't have a beneficiary. It goes to probate court, which you don't want to do. You really want to keep everything out of probate court that you can. And so I know that we all don't want to think about those things, but we should make sure we have our beneficiaries up to date. Sometimes our circumstances change and our beneficiaries change. Often when we're young in our career, our parents are our beneficiaries and they may not be with us anymore. Or our spouses, and we may have not the same spouse. So it's really, really, really important. I can underline that 14 times, to go and make sure your beneficiaries are right on the Voya system.
Another thing to add to that, Carlos, and Karen mentioned this in her last presentation. Gosh, it was probably 2 years ago now, but the importance of setting up your online Social Security account as well. So your actual, retirement funds that, the Social Security funds that you'll receive, setting up that online account. More than anything, obviously you can do some forecasting and see where you're at, but the big thing is to set it up yourself so that somebody doesn't set it up fraudulently on your behalf. And that way you've got the account and you kind of know where you're at. So that's another thing to sort of put on the to-do list if you haven't already. I know many people get the paper statements, but to set that up online is a really good idea.
Absolutely.
No, I think I'll just echo some of the really wise things that Carlos was kind enough to lay out there, right? We have all this technology these days. We might have an old paper beneficiary form that might have been from a different point of your life cycle, right? We all know how things change, families grow, right? So that's just what we really want to make sure we're doing the best job to have that information on file from you. I think probably the most efficient way is just to, if you're comfortable, of course, to go on the online interface and complete it. I would say if you're not comfortable doing that, let's just do a conference call. We can verify your personal information down at the service center and just get that done right on the call. I just want to make sure that everyone knows how we can accomplish this. We do have the technology on our end to make this quite easy for you folks. Yeah, and I guess the other thing that, and Mary, you were kind enough to talk about the Social Security. Really appreciate that as well. Just wanted to give everyone a little bit of more insight on how I do financial planning, right? We have our paychecks, right? And we have our lifestyle, right? That we've been living based on predominantly what we're earning. That's really kind of how I back into what you need in retirement. So my objective is for you not to take a pay cut in retirement, but to continue that lifestyle in retirement. So looking at what your net paycheck is, forecasting that out with inflation, with your savings, with your various income sources like Social Security, for example, putting that all together and forecasting at a launch off point, which is 65 for a lot of folks, right? Medicare eligibility gives folks the opportunity a lot of the time to retire because health insurance is so important to the picture. And it's something that we can't go without because we can do all this planning and then one medical event could potentially wipe out all the savings that we have. So it's always important to plan. I really specialize in the financial planning. Invest, right? Invest at the right amount of risk. When we know what the goal is, we know how much risk we need to take to get there and to realign that risk as we get closer to that date. Important things. And then protection, whether that's health insurance, life insurance, long-term care insurance, really having the proper amount of insurance at the various stages of the life cycle, right? If you're purchasing a home, it might make sense to maybe get a term insurance policy. If we're coming up on retirement, it's probably time to potentially look at long-term care insurance. That's really the conversations that I have, for example, and really looking at each individual situation. It's always different. It's quite exciting to me. So I really look forward to hopefully having the opportunity to work with you folks and kind of drawing that financial roadmap. It really doesn't matter the age, the point of the life cycle. I would say it's never too early or never too late to plan. Really and truly, I work with folks of all walks of life, all economic levels. So we all know, right? Nothing's free in life. There's no such thing as a free lunch, but we already have this engagement together. So I'm compensated based on the money that I manage. That's how I've always structured my business. I'm not going to charge you for financial planning if that's a service that you'd like to pursue down the road. So really kind of summarizing, I know I talk a lot. I'm kind of like one of these wind-up toys that just keeps flipping and flipping. And I'm kind of like that in person as well, as you'll see down the road. So disconnect between Main Street America and Wall Street, unfortunately, has grown through this time period. We can see that in rural Maine. We can see that in the greater Portland area. I've heard a lot of statistics that Maine is probably the most comparable state to Maine is Nevada, because the amount of tourism that we need to support our economy is rather astonishing. But I always joke with folks, right? People pay a lot of money to come up here in July and August for a reason, because there's nowhere else I'd rather be, and I don't travel out of the state for those months for those reasons. So I think right as things reopen, right, as long as things reopen, we're optimistic that the markets will perform, right? If we have setbacks in the pace of reopening, and that's going to be so different all around the country, not making this about partisan at all. There's some areas that are living, working much differently. Even areas in the great state of Maine, I'll say, that are living, working much differently, and we'll leave those names here on the call. But unfortunately, right, a lot of sole proprietors, a lot of LLCs are struggling through this time period, right? Small business is struggling. A lot of small businesses are very cyclical. Just think about the restaurant industry, right? So much small business. Think about Portland, right? Right, if we're not having cruise ships come in, what I felt like, just kind of boots on the ground this summer, it felt like people were still recreating at the beach areas, right? For example, but they weren't coming into Portland at night like they used to without those services, right? Without the bars, without the restaurants, without the concerts. So how much longer can that go on? Well, I'm not really sure. Not gonna give you an opinion on that today, but I do believe that the markets did well last year, and a lot of it had to do with big businesses not closing. Amazon, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, right? They've gotten stronger through this time period where, unfortunately, your local hardware store might be out of business, for example. So unfortunately, I think we're going to see a little bit more of that once things are more normalized, new normal, hybrid, new, who knows what it's really going to look like. I do think that there certainly will be a pickup in economic activity, as there's certainly pent up demand. And when I think, right, we all have travel pent up demand. I know that we usually do a little winter travel in my household. That's not really an option, given the current state of the world and what we do for a living. So when we're able to go out and about, travel, recreate, there's certainly going to be some folks out there splurging, but it's really hard to say, frankly, just with what we're hearing, what we're seeing. Will that date be sometime this summer? I'm hopeful, but I'm not sure it will be. Like, for example, will we have concerts in the great state of Maine this year? I'm really not sure, for example. So I think I'll pause there. Really appreciate everyone's time today. Wanted to just offer everyone the comprehensive review of their account and the financial planning service. I know I have some other folks that have already taken the opportunity to schedule those calls today. So really appreciate it with those folks. Looking forward to picking those conversations up on more of an individual basis. But the other thing I'll just mention, I work for you. So whenever it's a good time for you, it's a good time for me. So feel free to reach out. If I can't take the call, just leave us a message. We'll get right back to you. And really appreciate the opportunity today, Lisa. Karen, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to maybe add, just kind of closing remarks, maybe on beneficiaries and anything of that nature. Oh, I think.
Karen, you're on mute.
All right, I take that all back. I just wanted everyone to know that I'm also here until 12/31. That is my retirement date. And thanks in part to fame, I'm going to become a ski bum in the winter at Saddleback. But anyone can reach out to me throughout this year if it's for their beneficiaries, any investment reviews or planning. I will refer them to Zeke, but certainly I'm here for them to reach out to as well. Appreciate my short time working with Fame. It was wonderful. I'm ending a 40-year career with Voya and its predecessor companies. So I'm excited, and I look forward for Zeke working with you, and I think you'll all appreciate his help. So check and call me anytime.
Outstanding, Karen. Yeah, great stuff. So I have taken the 800 number over from Karen. So those calls are coming directly to me. So really, I have worked with some of you folks, just fielded some calls through volatility, but really appreciate the opportunity and in a group setting today, Lisa. I mean, this is one of the, I'm going to say one of the more successful Zoom engagements that we've had. I think that had a lot to do with just this group being very engaged, very savvy, I would say, right? Doing a lot of remote work just on the day-to-day. I think, right, you have 10, 15 employees. I see your boardroom there. That's a gorgeous room. Hopefully I'll have the opportunity to get in there sometime and we can spread out and be distanced and wear our masks and have some good old-fashioned meetings. That's something I'm really looking forward to.
All right. Thank you for joining us, Zeke. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. A lot of you have filled up the time slots today.
Yes.
One, so Zeke is full for today. But again, I sent out his information. Go ahead and click on that schedule yourself button for any time that you do have available, and it'll link you right up to Zeke's calendar. Any final questions before I sign everybody off? Nope. All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again soon.
Take care, folks.
Thank you.